Right. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so today we're starting Shmuel Bet properly, and we're going to discuss the beginning stages of David Hamelech as a king. And we're not going to go through the whole of Shmuel Bet. I'm just going to take certain portions of it, and we'll try to analyze certain things which took place in his lifetime, and then we'll go on to Shlomo. So let's start off. Okay, the beginning of Shmuel Bet is the following. Okay, that means after the death of Shaul, which we learned last time, where David Hamelech said his famous eulogy, it's written the following. Vahi achrechen, in line number 5, Vayishal David Bashem Lemor, Hale ba'achat arei Yehuda. Should I go into one of the cities of Judah? Okay, David Hamelech was living in the desert. He was like what's it called? He didn't have any place to stay because Shaul was running after him. So he says, should I go and stay in one of the cities? Vayomer Hashem elav, and Hashem says to him, Ale, go. Vayomer David, ana ele, where should I go? Vayomer Chevrona. He said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, go to Hebron. Vayal Sham David, and David goes there. V'gam shtei nashav, Achinoam ha'Yisraelit, v'Avigail eshet Nabal ha'Karmeli. V'anashev asher ha'elo imo ha'ela David, ushu beitu, v'yeshvu b'arei Hebron, and they sat around Hebron. Right. So that is the beginning of the story. David Hamelech goes to live in Hebron. And there, in inverted commas, he sets up his beginning of his kingdom. Now, what's very interesting is the following. Okay, let's try to analyze this for a moment. What's going on here? David Hamelech has been appointed a king by Shmuel. Okay, there's no other king. Besides him, there's no leader. Shaul is dead. Yonatan is dead. And yet, what's very interesting is that David Hamelech feels that he needs to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu what to do. Now, why? Why should he ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu what to do? He was already anointed as a king. So what's the problem? Somebody's got to fill the vacuum. And this question is very, very important, because it's going to teach us a lesson of how David Hamelech thinks. What is in his mind? Now let's go back to the screen for a moment, and we're going to learn the Malbim. The Malbim says the following. Line number 15. Achar shesiper adhena ki David lo echzik malchuto b'choska. David Hamelech, even though he was anointed by Shmuel, never ever wanted to be a king. Ke'eved, like a servant, mored ba'adonav. David Hamelech never wanted to rebel against Shaul. Lo b'tchilato, not at the beginning, ki nimshach al pi navi, even though he was anointed by a prophet. V'lo b'chayei Shaul, and not in the lifetime of Shaul. Shaya nichna lefanav ke'eved ne'eman. He submitted himself like a servant to Shaul. V'lo brought forth, and even when Shaul was running after him, ki nafal oivo shnei pamim biyado. Twice Shaul fell into the hands of David. V'lo shalach yado b'mshiach Hashem. And he didn't want to do anything to the Mashiach Hashem. V'lo gam acharei moto. Not even after Shaul's death. Ki harag et ha'mevaser mitato. He even killed the guy who told him about the death. V'safad gam konen alav, and he eulogized him. Yisaper ki gam ata. Even now, lo haya b'da'ato lashuv ulevakesh atara. He didn't want to accept upon himself the crown וחשב אולי, יגיע המלכות לבן שאול, perhaps שאול המלך, son should be king. ואולי לא הגיע עדיין הזמן שימלוך. And the time for him to be king hasn't arrived yet. ואז לא יהיה בסכנה בשובו לארץ, and he might be in danger. ולא עשה דבר עד נמלך באלוקים. And he didn't want to do anything until he asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu. ושאל אם ישוב, if he does, ולאיזה מקום ישוב. ולא סמך על עצתו ושכלו. David Hamelech did not rely on his own advice. So first of all, David Hamelech's character. The character of David Hamelech. David Hamelech never ever wanted to be a king. He never wanted it. He never thought he deserved it. Okay, he carries on, in inverted commas, the legacy of Moshe Rabbeinu. Who am I? He continued the legacy of Shaul. A king is not somebody who wants to be a king. Never. Because a king has to have certain qualities. And the whole lifetime of all these people, Moshe, Yoshua, Shaul, David never ever wanted to be king. Are they ru'uyim? Are they befitting to be kings? And even though David Hamelech was anointed as a king, has the time arrived for me? Is it the correct time? And therefore, what does he do? He asks HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can tell him whether the time has come. Now that is David Hamelech. And when one learns Tehillim, you see that the whole time. Anochi tolat velo ish. I'm like a little worm and not a man, etc., etc. And all these qualities are the true qualities of a great leader. Am I befitting to be a leader? That's stage number one. And that is the introduction to David Hamelech. Has the time right? Am I the correct person? Will I manage? Etc., etc. And the only one who can give him that advice is HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. That is the introduction. Right. Sorry. From Larry to everyone. Did other people know about Shmuel's anointment of David? Yes. Because Jonathan, the son of Shaul, knew it. And Shaul more or less knew it. Okay? But even so, and all the officers of Shaul knew it. And still, David Hamelech doesn't want it. Right. That is the first insight. The second insight is the next words of the Malbim, which need interpretation, and that we're going to learn through Abrabanel. Because the last words of the Malbim in line number 23 are the following. V'lo samach al atzato v'sichlo, and David Hamelech didn't want to rely on his own initiative and his understanding. Ki zeh haya ma'alat David neged Shaul, because this is one of the ma'alot of David vis-a-vis Shaul. Sheishlich al Hashem ya'avot. He threw on Hashem everything. So that means, for some reason, Shaul didn't ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for everything. David Hamelech does. Now let's try to understand this concept, and we're going to go very slowly through the Abrabanel. Vayachrech says the following. Imeyot sheshama David shemet Shaul. David Hamelech hears that Shaul is dead. Lo nitoreh lalechet el Eretz Yisrael. He didn't want to go to Eretz Yisrael mibli tzivui Eloki, without the commandment of Hashem. Ki haya inyano מתחלף מתכונת שאול. He was different than שאול. כי הוא לא היה שומר מצווה, והיה עושה מעשיו לפי דעתו, ולא נשען על המצווה האלוקית. ולכן נענש. Shaul didn't always ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu everything. And he was punished for that. Omnam, David היה בהפך מזה. David Hamelech was the opposite. כי לא היה נשען על דעתו, כי אם היה לציווי האלוקי. והיה על כל דבר שואל בשם. Now, where do we learn this from? Now let's start off by learning certain qualities or certain stories of Shaul. Shmuel Aleph, and then we'll go back to line number 30 in the Rabbi. The first story goes the following. Shaul is going to fight against the Plishtim. Vayome Shaul la'achiyah, line number 39. La'achiyah. Hagish Aaron Elokim. Bring me the Aaron Elokim. Ki haya Elokim bayom hahu b'vnei Israel, because the Aaron was there. Vayhi. And what happens if the Aaron Elokim there, the Kohen Gadol is there, and he's got the Urim B'tumim. Vayhi ad diber Shaul el Kohen, was Shaul speaking to the Kohen. Va'amon asher b'machane Plishtim. Vayelech haloch barov. And Shaul all of a sudden sees the Plishtim coming near to him. Vayelech haloch barov. Vayomer Shaul el Kohen, esof yadecha. Don't bother asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We haven't got time for this now. Vayiza'ek Shaul v'chol ha'am asher ito, and all the people with Shaul, Vayizak Shaul v'chol ha'am asher ito vayavo ad ha'milchama. V'hinei hayta cherev ish b'reu mo'oma gdola. And there was big balagan. Right. Shaul says to David, to the Kohen Gadol, we haven't got time now to ask. He was worried. He was too hasty. Next. And Shaul, later in the chapter, let's go to the camp of the Plishtim. V'navozu bahem ad Orion. And we'll go and take all the spoil. Whatever you want, you should do. Yomer Kohen, Nikva. Halom el Elokim. The Kohen said, let's ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu first whether this is a good idea. Ishal Shaul be'Elokim, ha'ered achar Plishtim. Should I go after the Plishtim? Atidnem b'yad Yisrael. Lo anahu b'yom hahu. And God doesn't answer him. Okay? Number one. So Shaul twice doesn't ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Then, just before his death, Vayishal Shaul b'Hashem v'lo anahu Hashem, gam b'chalomot, gam ba'urim, gam b'nevi'im. That is Shaul. Shaul often is worried about the reaction of the people. We know that from the story of Amalek. We know the story later on. The whole time he worries what the people will say. But let's read about David Hamelech. In Shmuel Bet it's written, Vayishmu Plishtim, and the Plishtim heard ki mashcho et David lemelech al Yisrael. Vayolu kol Plishtim levakesh et David, and the Plishtim came up to fight against David. Vayishal David b'Shem, pasuk 19, line number 58. Vayishal David b'Shem, halel Plishtim hatidem biadi, vayomer Hashem El David, Ale, kinaton etain Plishtim yadecha. You'll manage to do it. Vayavo David b'var pratzim, David Hakem. And it says, what does David Hamelech say? Vayomer paratz Hashem et oivai lefanai. And David Hamelech says, this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's doing, it's not me. And then carries on, Vayosifu od Plishtim la'alot vayintashu b'mei Refaim. Vayishal David b'Shem. And then David Hamelech says b'Shem. Vayomer lo ta'aleh. Don't go this way. Don't attack them in the normal way. Go in a different direction, etc., etc. Pasuk Chafei. Vayas David ken ka'asher tzivau Hashem. Vayachet Plishtim migeva ad boach gazel. David Hamelech doesn't stop asking. Let's read the Midrash. Says the Midrash, וכן אתה מוצא, כשהלך שמואל למשוך את דוד, when Shmuel was going to anoint David, היו מלאכי השרת מקטרגים אותו. The angels complained, ואמרו, ריבונו של עולם, מפני מה נטלת המלכות משאול? Why are you taking the kingdom away from Shaul and giving to David? אני אומר לכם, מה בין שאול לדוד? I'll tell you what the difference is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to the angels. Shaul halach, Shaul Urim v'Tumim. Shaul goes and asks the Urim v'Tumim. כיוון שראה שבאו עליו פלישתים, אמר לכהן אסוף ידיך, ולא המתין עד שיגמור את הדבר. Doesn't matter, we'll deal with it. שנאמר ויהי עד דבר שאול אל הכהן ויאמר שלו כאסוף ידיך. אבל דוד, בשעה שראה את הפלישתים באים אליו בעמק רפאים, מיד התחיל לשאול באורים ותומים שנאמר ויוסיפו עוד פלישתים. וינטשו, ויאמר לא תעלה, אין לך רשות לפשוט ידו בהם. אפילו אם היו קרבים אצלך. wait. אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא, ראו מה בין דוד לשאול. What is the difference between David and Shaul? דיבורו של הקדוש ברוך הוא שקיים והעיר לו. לכן נאמר, נר לרגלי דבריך. Your words are a candle to my feet. David Hamelech is the par excellence example of absolute emunah. David Hamelech symbolizes the connection and leadership as a king. We're not going into the private affairs of David Hamelech yet with the story of Bathsheba. But at the moment, as a leader, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, David Hamelech doesn't move from the words of Hashem. Let's go back to the Abrabanel in 9, number 30. And it says, because the Abrabanel quotes a fascinating pasuk in Divrei Hayamim. And what does it say there? Vayamot Shaul, line number 30. כמו שכתב בדברי הימים. Vayamot Shaul. B'ma'alo, when he transgressed the words of Hashem. Al dvar Hashem. Asher lo shamar, he didn't keep to the words of Hashem. V'gam lishol ba'ov lidrosh v'lo darash b'Hashem. Vayimiteo Hashem, and God kills him. Vayasev et hamlucha leDavid ben Yishai. Hinei Shaul shelo haya doresh b'Hashem hemito Hashem. A king has to have this total faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Shaul doesn't have it. Hinei Shaul shelo haya doresh b'Hashem hemito Hashem. ודוד שהיה דורש באלוקיו המליכו על ישראל, בזה שכתב כאן, וישאל דוד בשם לאמור האלה. The first thing David Hamelech does is ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shaul is dead. Logically, David Hamelech should take it over. David Hamelech says, no. Everything which I do, I have to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the introduction. And Divrei Hayomim, which I'm going to explain in a minute, gives this historical perspective. What does Ezra Sofer say? Ezra Sofer says, if I have to evaluate David vis-a-vis Shaul, one thing sticks out. One thing. As a king, Shaul doesn't have the patience to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and David doesn't do a thing without asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As a leader, I'm saying. As a leader. And this is what Ezra Sofer tells us in a historical perspective. That is why David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayom. Because David HaMelech is the king who in every single part of his life, as a king, asks HaKadosh Baruch Hu what to do. That is David Hamelech's greatness. And that is the introduction to David Hamelech. Even though he's been anointed as a king, Shmuel anointed him, he doesn't move without HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, I want to read with you now a part of the Abrabanel who basically develops this whole idea. And the Abrabanel says the following. Line number 85. שלמה שהיה חטא שאול ופשעו שלא אמר דבר השם, ולא לקח עצה ממנו בעניין המלחמות. And he never ever took עצה, advice from HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the wars, לא בגילגל, כי לא שמע הזמן אשר אמר לו שמואל, ולא בעמלק, שלא עשה הנקמה כאשר ציווה השם. רצה יתברך, להראות העמים והשרים שהיה דוד שומר מצווה, ושלא יעבור ולא יפיל מדבר השם ארצה. ולזה, כאשר ראו משתדל ונחשב מאוד מלאכת הפלישתים, השיבו יתברך שלא יעלה. That means everything. And what does Hashem do it? Hashem tests him. Are you going to follow me strategically? השיבו יתברך שלא יעלה, ויסוב אל אחריהם, ולא ילחם עד שישמע כל צעדת בחיים. וכל זה, and all this is to tell us, לנסותו, אם ישמור דבר השם ומצוותו, או יעבור עליו, כאשר עשה שאול. וסיפר הכתוב שעשה דוד כן, כאשר ציווהו השם. והיה שיאמר הכתוב, ויעש דוד כן, ויעש דוד. אבל נכבל בזה המאמר להודיע שקיים זה להיותו מצווה אלוקית ועצר ברוחו. David Hamelech was king, and yet he doesn't follow his own instincts, but he follows everything by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. ובזה מהשלמות הגדול אליו, ולזה התכלית נזכר זה פה, etc. David Hamelech is the king par excellence. And that is the introduction. Sorry, I just want to go back to the first sentence. Sorry, share, right at the beginning. The introduction. Vayhi acharechem, line number 5. After the death of Shaul. And David Hamelech has said this kinah, and is mourning over Shaul. What is the first thing David Hamelech does? Vayishal David Hashem. David Hamelech asks HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is why et semach David avdecha me'era tatzmiach. David Hamelech symbolizes the absolute emunah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is the first introduction. Anava, humility, not taking the kingdom by force, by asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and showing us that even, and that is the difference between Shaul and David. Shaul is scared what the people will say, even when HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him things. And David Hamelech has got this, what we call in the language of the Chassidut, koach habitul, his ability to nullify himself, and is like a worm, anochi tolat velo ish. That is introduction number 1. Anybody got anything to say? And then we'll carry on. Can we carry on? Okay. Let's carry on the next story. What's the next story of David Hamelech? The next story of David Hamelech is also quite amazing. The story is the following. It is the following. Sorry. Right. Line number 100. Sorry, let's just go back here. Line number 12. Vayavo anshe Yehuda. and the people of Yehuda came. וימשכו שם את דוד למלך על בית יהודה. And David Hamelech, first of all, becomes king over his own tribe. ויגידו לדוד לאמור. And they told David, saying, אנשי יבש גלעד, אשר קברו את שאול. That the people of Yavesh Gilad, on the other side of the Jordan, had buried the remnants of Shaul. Now, what's the reaction of David Hamelech? Its story. And here we're going now, line number 100. וישלח דוד מלאכים אל אנשי יבש גלעד. David Hamelech sends messengers to Yavesh Gilad. ויאמר עליהם, ברוכים אתם לשם. You are blessed to הקדוש ברוך הוא. אשר עשיתם החסד הזה עם אדוניכם, עם שאול, with your master שאול, ותקברו אותו. ועתה, and now, יעש השם עמכם חסד ואמת. הקדוש ברוך הוא should do with you kindness and truth. וגם אנוכי אעשה איתכם הטובה הזאת. And I will also be good to you, אשר עשיתם את הדבר הזה. ועתה תחזקנה ידיכם, והיו לי בני חיל, be my soldiers. כי מת אדוניכם שאול, because your master Shaul has passed away, has been killed. וגם אותי משכו בית יהודה למלך. And also me, I've been anointed by Yehuda. Now this is an unbelievable story because it teaches us so much about David, and we'll introduce it by the questions of the Malbim, which is quite amazing. Says the Malbim, why does the Navi tell us what David sent to Yavesh Gilad? What's so important about it? Velashon, also the language in line number 104, I will also do you something good. It's goodness. What's so special about the word zot, this goodness? So, the Malbim is going to give us insight of what goes on. Because what in actual fact happens here? Vayavo. And it's written, people came and anointed David. The first stage is what his own tribe anointed him as king. The main being complete king hasn't been done yet. There should have been two kings from Binyamin. And it tells us something else. כי בצדקו לא נהג כיתר שרים המולכים תחת עיניהם, שדרכם להרוג כל אוהבי מלכם, ולמחות כל זכר למען תתקיים מלכותם. In a normal system where a new lineage begins, the normal arrangement is that a new president of the United States throws out all the old advisors of the old president. In the olden times, a new king used to kill off, in a new lineage, all the people who supported the old king. That was the natural sequence of events. Okay, if you go through the history of English history of the kings, Shakespeare speaks about it a lot, how one king used to kill off the advisors of the previous king. What does David Hamelech should have done? You showed respect to Shaul. What do you mean? He wanted to kill me. I'm going to kill you because you showed him his respect. What does David Hamelech say? Amazing. David Hamelech says to them, Nafochu, just the opposite. In line number 100. אז הגידו לו שאנשי יבש גלעד קברו את שאול, ומסרו נפשם לקחת גווייתו. line number 118. נהפוך הוא, כי אז הגידו לו שאנשי יבש גלעד קברו את שאול, ומסרו נפשם, and they had מסירות נפש, לקחת גווייתו, to take his body, מחומת בית שם. וזה סימן שהם אוהבי שאול, they loved שאול, וביתו גם אחרי מותו. בכל זאת, even so, לא קצף עליהם. David Hamelech never got angry with them. כי שלח לברכם. He sent them a brocha. David Hamelech sends a brocha to the people who had Mesiras Nefesh for Shaul. And what do they say? What does he say to them? It's an amazing statement. He says, "Asitem chesed hazeh im adonechem im Shaul." Says the Malbim, Adonechem shezaya mechuyav. Mitzad heyota Adonechem, mitzad heyoto Shaul b'chir Hashem. So David Hamelech says to them, you did this most amazing thing. You showed respect. Shaul was Mashiach Hashem. What does he say? He says to them, V'ata yas Hashem. Achrei shebemidah she'adam moded modedim lo. The same midah which a person has, we give it over to him. V'vadai yas Hashem imachem chesed. Neged hachesed she'asitem. You did chesed to Shaul, Kodesh Baruch should give chesed to you. V'achrei she'Hashem meshalem sachar tov, and the same way as Hashem pays true reward, yaseh machem emet. V'gam anochi, I'm going to follow the ways of Hashem. Hashem is proud of you. Hashem, you did chesed. Hashem will give you chesed. Gam anochi, hodiyam, bal yifachdu. They shouldn't be scared. The people of Yavesh Gilad. Ala sakana shiagiem al zeh bekal min ha-plishtim. What could happen? You kidnap the body from the Plishtim, from the Philistines. They'll come and take revenge from you. No, I will guard you. Gam anochi mukhan la'asot etchem hatova hazot, asher ba'avuro asitem et hadavar hazeh. רוצה לומר, אחרי שהדבר שעשו למסור נפשם על קבורת שאול, נמשך על ידי הטובה שעשה שאול עמהם להצילם מהנחש עמוני, גם הוא יעשה עמהם טובה להצילם מאויביהם. David Hamelech says, I'm going to guard you. I'm going to look after you. You did chesed to Shaul, I'm going to carry on. This way I'm going to guard you. V'ata, רוצה לומר, says the Malbi, מת אדונכם שאול, ואין מה שילחם בעדכם. צריכים אתם להתחזק בעצמכם. You've got to get strong, and בל תתייאשו לחשוב שאין מה כן בעדכם, כי גם אותי משכו בית יהודה, ויהיה לכם למשגב בצר. And I'll be your backbone. This is such, what do we learn from this about David Hamelech? We learn from this about David Hamelech two things. Number one is his unbelievable respect for Shaul. David Hamelech, even though David Hamelech was in danger from the death, Shaul remains Mashiach Hashem. And the people who have Mesiras Nefesh to bury Shaul, David Hamelech says the opposite. I'm going to respect you and I'm going to give you chesed, I'm going to look after you. That is the introduction to David Hamelech. Two things. Bein Adam lamakom, bein Adam lachaveru. David Hamelech's bitul, his ability to mevatel himself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And number two is leadership. Great, great leadership and chesed and respect to Shaul and the people who had Mesiras Nefesh. That is the introduction to David Hamelech. It's fascinating that Shmuel decides Okay, the people who edited Melachim decided to put these two stories into the opening verses regarding David Hamelech as a king. Bein Adam lamakom and Bein Adam lachaveiro. What is a true king? True king is somebody who has this unbelievable covered for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Yirat Shamayim. And number one, number two, V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, respect for Shaul, etc., etc. That is the first two stories. Okay, now, one more thing we're going to discuss. And that is a phrase which David Hamelech uses. Let's go back to the Psukim. David Hamelech uses the following statement. What does he say? V'ata yas Hashem imachem chesed ve'emes. Line number 104. Yas Hashem imachem chesed ve'emet. Now, what did Yavesh Gilad do? Yavesh Gilad behaved as a Chevra Kadisha. As a Chevra Kadisha. What do we call a Chevra Kadisha? Often you see the abbreviations Gimel, Chet, Shin, Aleph. Gmilus Hasodim Shel Emes. Chevra Kadisha is known as Gmilut Chasadim Shel Emet. You buried Shaul, you deserve Chesed ve'emes. Now, where does this pasuk come from? One of the first times it's mentioned is the following. Line number 136. Vayikruvu Yemei Yisrael Amut. Vayikra Livno Yosef. And he calls his son Yosef. Vayomer Imna matzati chen beinecha, simna yadcha chesed tachat yirechi, v'asita imadi chesed ve'emes. Al na tikbareni b'mitzrayim. Says Rashi, why is it called, why does he say chesed ve'emes? Chesed shosim im hametim, hu chesed shel emes. She'eino metzapeu letashlum gmur. Because the dead person can never ever repay. So Yaakov Avinu uses, in relationship to burial, the terminology chesed ve'emes. So David says to Yavesh Gilad, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should pay you back chesed ve'emes. All right, let's go back. What does David Hamelech say? V'ata yaseh Hashem imachem chesed ve'emes, because you buried Shaul. This is how we should learn Tanakh. Terminology. Same terminology as it appears in the Torah. And now we're going to learn the fascinating Maharal on this subject. Why is it called Chesed ve'emes? Says the Maharal. Divrei Razal nechonim heim gam belo pikpuk. Chazal said, there was an argument about what this explanation of Rashi was, and now he's going to say it. Ki bevadai shayach lomar chesed ve'emes b'chol davar. Often you can use the word terminology chesed ve'emes in front of in everything. Ki hu chesed, because it's kindness. Mitzad v'gam hu emes shekach roi la'asot. V'davar sheroi la'asot hu nikra emes. אך הוגשה להם לרז"ל שכתב חסד ואמס, מפני שכל הנעשה למתים, אינו רק בשביל גמילות חסדים. Whatever we do for dead people is always called גמילות חסדים. שקבורת המת אינו אלא בשביל גמילות חסדים. אף על גב שכאן היה אביו, even though here it's talking about יעקב אבינו, הוא מצווה עליו לקוברו, and Yaakov Avinu is commanding Yosef to bury him in Mitzrayim, הקבורה בשביל שחייב לגמול חסד עמו, אבל אמת לקה, but there's not necessarily truth. שהרי עיקר המצווה, the main concept of burial is really גמילות חסדים, והחאית בפרק אלו מציאות, כי קבורה היא גמילות חסדים, ואין שייך לומר שכך ראוי לעשות. זה שייך בחיים שראוי לעשות, אבל למתים אין שייך בזה. What does it mean it's befitting to do it? רק הכל גמילות חסדים נקרא. Everything is גמילות חסדים. לכך הוצרכו לומר, חסד ואמת. רוצה לומר, sometimes I do chesed, which isn't really true. I want the covered, I want people to know, I want the guy who I did chesed to be able to thank me. But, klomar, says the Maharal, shu chesed gamur, she'eino metzapeh letashlum gamur. I can never ever expect repayment. The dead guy can never ever say to me, thank you. V'hu chesed ve'emet. ולפיכך, בכל מקום פירוש אמת על המעשה. Whenever it's true, whenever the terminology emet is on the action which is done, which you should have done. וכאן פירוש אמת על החסד שהוא אמת. Not every chesed is always true. It's not always true chesed. That means there is chesed, and you should have done this chesed. No. Here, the chesed is the real truth. ומכל מקום, קשה, לפי דרך רז"ל שהיה לו לכתוב חסד בליבב, מה חסד ואמת? ואין זה קשה. מפני שגם כאן יש כאן שני דברים, חסד ואמת. What does that mean? שהרי משהו גומל חסד עם המת, הוא חסד למת. It's kindness to the dead body. וגם הוא עושה אמת, שהחסד הזה הוא אמת. כי העושה חסד שלא למת, somebody who does kindness who's to not a person who's dead, אין עושה חסד אמת. שהוא נראה חסד, ואין חסד גמור. ופועל זה שהוא פועל חסד למת, הוא פועל אמת. לפי שנראה שהוא גומל חסד, והוא באמת כך, שהרי אינו מצפה לתשלום. אבל שאר גמילות חסד, שנראה שהוא גומל חסד, אינו כך לפי האמת. It's not always true. לפיכך הגומל חסד למת, הוא רוצה חסד. ומעשיו הנראים שהוא גומל חסד, הוא אמת גם כן, הנה יש חסד באמת. David Hamelech says to the people of Yavesh Gilad, you have done absolute truth. Now, let's look at the story now. David Hamelech, Shaul, his army has been more or less wiped out. His son, Yehonatan, is also dead. The people who have Mesirut Nefesh, and real Mesirut Nefesh, to do one thing, to bury their king under the threat of death. There's only one reason why they're doing it. The reason why they do it is, David Hamelech realizes, it's not covered for their king. It's not because they respect the king. Yavesh Gilad, somebody could have thought that is out of respect to Shaul HaMelech. David Hamelech sees the following. Let's look at the language which David Hamelech uses. Vayishlach David malachim el anshei Yavesh Gilad. Vayomer aleihem. Bruchim atem Lashem. You are blessed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Asher asitem hachesed hazeh. You have done this kindness. David Hamelech sees it's not out of respect to Shaul that they have done it. It's out of their feeling of chesed. It is impossible that a Jew, whoever it is, can be left in a goysha place. Every single Jew needs a kever of Israel. And we have to bury them. And we have the Mesirus Nefesh of looking and finding the bodies of Jews. Yavesh Gilad were the founders of something which Jews have done throughout the generations. If you remember how we always want to give and bring back bodies to a kever Israel. Okay, famous story of Rav Goren after the 1948 war. Rav Goren goes and brings the bodies of the people of Gush Etzion back to a kever Israel. How the whole time our lives are full of the idea, okay, bringing back the body of Eli Cohen from Syria, bringing the bodies back, finding the bodies. Yavesh Gilad were the founders, in inverted commas, of this movement, of the importance of a kever Israel. And that David Hamelech says, and this is what David Hamelech sees. Bruchim atem Lashem, asher asitem hachesed hazeh, im adonechem, to your king, im Shaul, vatikbru oto. And David Hamelech says, this is chesed of emes. The family of Shaul are finished. So what have you done? You've done chesed, and the chesed is absolute emes. David Hamelech says to them, because you have done this and brought back and not left any Jew in a kever, in a place of the goyim, Ani esei etchem hatova hazot. I'm going to give you this chesed. Asher asitem hadavar hazeh. And don't worry. Atem techzakna yedechem. V'yu livnei chayim. You'll be soldiers. Ki met adonechem. V'gam oti mashchu bet Yehuda lemelech. This is perhaps the most unbelievable concept which David Hamelech does. He empowers. What does he do as a king? He empowers the nation. He gives them strength. He gives them shkoyach. He gives them all the ability. I'm proud of my Jewish people who have actually gone to find the king of Am Yisrael, who was the prize of the Plishtim. Think to yourselves, the body of Shaul was in actual fact the prize of the Plishtim. They had the king of Israel captured, dead, the dead body, and they could show it off. And here Yavesh Gilad have absolute Mesirus Nefesh to bring back the body of the king, because we cannot leave a dead body in the hands of the Plishtim. Okay, I just want to finish off by something which was quite amazing. I don't know if anybody of you been to the Bet HaKvarot of Worms. Worms is a town near Frankfurt, and there are two bodies. One of them is the kever of the Maharal Mirutenburg. Maharal Mirutenburg was put in prison as a ransom for the Jewish, to pay for and the Jews didn't have the money to pay. And he refused, the Maharal Mirutenburg refused to be paid, the ransom to be paid. He died in prison. And after his death, there was a very rich Jew who was podeh, paid the ransom to the Yemach Shemoinik, and he got the body out. And in the Beis HaKvoros of Worms stands together the two Kvarot, the kever of the Maram Rutenburg, and next to him is the body, the kever of the person who paid the ransom. This is Gemilus Chasodim Shel Emes. And that is the two stories of David Hamelech. Emunah and Ben Adam L'Chaveroi, and imparting and empowering every single Jew to have Mesiras Nefesh, because that is a great leader. A great leader is somebody who empowers the people under him to go ahead and do things and appreciate what they've done. And that he shows to the Jewish, to all of Am Yisrael, his respect for David, for Shaul, not like a normal king did, and appreciating and giving them the shkoyach which they need. Those are the two stories which open up the story of David Hamelech as a king. I thought these two stories are quite fascinating because it shows us what a true king is. Any hearot? Anybody want to say anything? Yes, Phil. You're on mute.
I want something quite different. Could I have your phone number? Because what I want to
My phone number? Yeah, I'll put it on chat. You call on WhatsApp, Phil, because I'm in South Africa.
Oh, is that
Use WhatsApp. Use WhatsApp.
Okay. No, it's not necessary. I just want to make it. I think your shirim are excellent, but I think you should. I mentioned to you before, the print should be a little bit better, and you can color what you're saying because you skip around, and I want to follow you. But by the time I figure out where you are, you're gone.
Okay, I'll try to do it. Okay, then I'm not very good. I'm not very computer. I'll try my best. I'll ask my wife to help me also to do it.
I appreciate that. I think I want to follow you because I think the material was wonderful. The time to figure out which postic around exactly, maybe if you color it, which everybody else who gives shiurim does.
Okay, I'll try my best. Okay.
But I think
no problem.
Excellent, and also your comment that his private life you'll discuss separately.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%. Because everybody would ask about David Hamelech and Bathsheba.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Okay, but we'll get to that. Mitzvah Hashem.
No, of course.
Right.
Anyway,
I'll try my best with the coloring. Okay, then.
It gives us a better concept instead of looking over your, and you're not.
I'll try my best. Okay.
Also, not accurate with the numbers sometimes.
Sorry.
You're not necessarily accurate with the numbers of the line, or
I'll try my best. Okay, then. No problem.
I want to try my best.
Okay, then.
Thank you very much.
Right. Okay. Put my number anyway on the chat at the moment. 1 minute, let me just check. Right. Okay, then that's my number. You can always phone me on WhatsApp. Okay, everybody. Okay, I don't know if I'm giving a shir before Shavuot. If not, then Chag Sameach to everybody.
Chag Sameach.
And Shavuos is the birthday of David Hamelech.
Which is?
Shavuos. That's why we read Megillat Ruth. We read Megillat Ruth because Shavuos is the birthday and the yortzeit of David Hamelech. So we read Megillat Ruth on Shavuos. Yeah. Okay then. Bye everybody. Bye.